My name is Caleb. I'm 23 and I work nights at a small gas station off a rural highway that most people only use when they're trying to avoid toll roads or traffic. It's one of those places you don't really notice unless you need it. Two pumps on each side, a tiny shop with snacks, coffee that tastes like burnt plastic, and a single camera that barely covers half the parking lot. The whole place feels forgotten, like it was built just to exist, not to be watched. I usually work alone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's quiet most nights. Too quiet sometimes. The kind of quiet where even the fridge hum sounds louder than it should. This all started on a Thursday. Around 2:20 a.m., I was wiping down the counter behind the register when two guys came in. They looked like they'd been out for a while. One of them was laughing at something on his phone, the other holding a cigar like he didn't care about rules or air quality. They bought coffee, stood around joking, and then one of them mentioned something outside. "Hey," he said, glancing through the glass. "There's a car out there that's been sitting in the lot since before we pulled in." I looked up. I hadn't noticed anything unusual, but then again, the register blocks part of the parking lot view. He went on, said the engine was running, headlights off, someone inside just sitting there. I shrugged it off at first. Happens sometimes. People rest, scroll their phones, wait for rides, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. After they left the counter, I stepped closer to the window. That's when I saw it. A dark sedan, parked near the far edge of the lot, engine running, no lights, too far into the shadow where the overhead lamp didn't quite reach. I couldn't see the driver clearly, just a shape, still, not moving. I didn't think much of it at first. I've seen tired drivers do worse things. About 20 minutes later, the two guys came back in. They were laughing less now. The one with the cigar leaned on the counter and said, "That guy's still out there." "Still?" I asked. "Yeah, just sitting there, watching us." Something in his tone changed when he said that last part. I stepped outside this time. Cold air hit me immediately. The parking lot was empty except for that one car. Still air, still running. I couldn't tell if the driver was watching me or not, but I felt it anyway. That strange pressure you get when you're being observed. When I came back inside, they were already talking again. "He hasn't moved," one of them said. "Not once." The other guy decided to joke it off and walk toward the car. I remember thinking it was a bad idea, but I didn't stop him. People do reckless things when they're bored or high or trying to prove a point. He stopped near the driver's side window and tapped on it. I couldn't hear what he said from inside, but I saw the driver's head turn slightly. Then, very slowly, the window rolled down. The guy leaned in and then immediately stepped back. I saw his face change. Not fear exactly, more like confusion mixed with discomfort. He walked back toward the store, shaking his head. "What?" I asked when he came inside. "He's not normal," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" He just stared at me, didn't say anything, then tried to act like he didn't understand English, but I heard him before that. He was speaking just fine. That made me glance back outside again. The car was still there, but now it felt closer somehow, even though it hadn't moved. A few minutes later, something else pulled into the lot. Another car. Same direction, same slow approach. It stopped near the entrance but didn't park, just sat there with headlights off. That's when the guy with the cigar said, "That's not normal either." The second car stayed there for maybe a minute. Then, without warning, it turned and left. At the exact same time, the first car started moving. Not toward the pumps, toward the exit. Slow at first, then faster. Like they were connected somehow. Like one followed the other without needing to signal it. The two guys finally decided to leave after that. They told me to be careful, joked a little less this time, and headed out. I watched both cars disappear down the highway in opposite directions, but something about it didn't sit right with me. Because the first car hadn't had a license plate. I'm not even sure when I noticed it, maybe when the headlights caught it just right, maybe when I stepped outside. But I remember clearly thinking, there's no plate back there, just an empty space where it should be. I stood there for a while after they left, looking at the now empty lot, trying to convince myself it was nothing, just a strange night. But deep down, I kept thinking about one thing. That driver had been sitting there long before anyone noticed him, and somehow it felt like he hadn't been waiting for coffee or fuel. He had been waiting for people to show up. The next night, I almost convinced myself I had overreacted. Almost. I was back on shift, same routine, same empty highway noise outside. Around 1:50 a.m., a group of 4 guys came in. Loud, tired, the kind of people who make a night shift feel less lonely just by existing. They grabbed snacks, coffee, and started talking while I rang them up. That's when one of them asked, "You got some cars sitting way out there by the pumps?" I froze for half a second. "What car?" I asked. He pointed through the glass. At the far end of the lot, near the edge where the light barely reached, there was a vehicle parked. Same position as yesterday. My stomach dropped before I even fully processed it. One of the guys continued, "Brand new Subaru or something. Engine running, no plates. 2 guys arguing inside it when we pulled in." I looked harder. It was there. Different shape than yesterday, but same feeling. Wrong in a way I couldn't explain. "No plates?" I repeated. "None," he said, and they were loud, like actually yelling. Then, when we walked closer, they just stopped and drove off. Another guy added, "We thought they were going to pull into the store, but they reversed like they were scared of us or something." I didn't like how familiar this sounded. It wasn't the same car, but it was the same behavior, the same pattern. And that's when something cold settled in my chest. These weren't random incidents. They were connected. I told them about the night before, about the sedan, about the guy who never got out of the car. They stopped joking after that. One of them even said, "So it's like they're watching the place?" I didn't answer, because I didn't want to say yes out loud. They stayed longer than expected, just hanging around, keeping the atmosphere from going completely silent. I was grateful for that in a way I didn't want to admit. Around 2:30 a.m., they finally left. The parking lot went quiet again. Too quiet. I stepped outside to take out trash a bit later, mostly just to break the tension in my head. Cold air, empty highway, faint hum of the lights above the pumps. That's when I saw it again. Not the Subaru, not the sedan, something new. A third vehicle, parked slightly off-angle near the edge of the lot, almost like it was trying not to be seen from the store window. Engine running. No lights, no plate. Again. I stood still for a moment longer than I should have. Then I went back inside and locked the door behind me. I called my coworker from earlier shifts, trying to sound casual, asking if he had ever noticed weird cars at night. He laughed at first. Then he said something that made my grip tighten on the phone. "Yeah," he said. "There's been reports of that. Not just one car, different ones. They rotate." "What do you mean rotate?" I asked. "I mean they come in pairs sometimes alone, but always around the same hours, always parked where the cameras don't fully catch them." I looked up at the monitor. The parking lot feed had a blind spot near the far edge, exactly where the car was sitting. I went silent. My coworker added, "Just don't interact with them. That's what management said. If they're there, just let them be." "Let them be?" I repeated. "Yeah, they said police checked it once. Nothing came of it. No IDs, no plates, no records. Just empty cars." That didn't make me feel better. It made it worse, because I suddenly realized something. None of the cars had actually entered the store. No one from them had ever come in. They just appeared, watched, then left when something changed outside, like they were reacting to us, not the other way around. Around 3:10 a.m., I saw the third car start to move. Slowly. Not leaving immediately, just rolling forward a few feet, then stopping again, like it was testing something. I stepped back from the window instinctively, and that's when all 3 pumps outside flickered. Just once, then returned to normal. The car stayed there another 10 minutes. Then, without warning, it reversed out of the lot and disappeared onto the highway. No headlights, no signals, just gone. I waited another hour after that, sitting behind the counter, barely touching my phone. Nothing else came. But I didn't feel relief. I felt like something was observing how I reacted. Like the night wasn't about cars at all. It was about behavior. And I had just learned I was part of whatever pattern they were running. Even now, I still think about those nights. Not the cars themselves, but the timing, the coordination, and the fact that every time someone noticed them too closely, they always left, like they didn't want witnesses, just presence. My name is Lucas, and I worked the night shift at a small rural motel just off Highway 19. It wasn't anything fancy. 2 floors, maybe 25 rooms, a parking lot that never fully lit up no matter how many bulbs they replaced. I took the job because it was quiet. That was the selling point. No rush, no constant customers, just a few late check-ins and truck drivers passing through who wanted sleep more than conversation. Most nights followed the same pattern. I'd sit behind the front desk for a while, then move to the back office where there was a small chair, a monitor showing the security cameras, and a buzzing old heater that clicked every time it turned on and off. The front desk had a bell for guests and a buzzer system for the main door after hours. Everything about the place felt predictable, until one night when it wasn't. It started just after 11:30 p.m. The lobby was empty, lights dim, outside road completely dead. I was going through some paperwork I didn't really need to finish that night when I heard the front buzzer. Once, then again. I looked up at the monitor. A man was standing outside. He looked normal at first glance, dark jacket, jeans, slightly hunched posture like he had been traveling a while. No luggage visible, no car parked directly in view of the camera. I pressed the door release. He stepped inside slowly, not rushed, not hesitant either, just calm. He didn't look around the lobby like most guests do. He walked straight to the counter and placed both hands on it. "I need a room," he said. His voice was low, even, almost rehearsed. I asked for ID. He hesitated just a second too long before pulling out a wallet. The ID looked fine, nothing unusual. I entered his details, took payment, and handed him a key card to room 108 on the ground floor. That's when I noticed something odd. He didn't take the key right away. He just stared at it, not at me, at the key, like it meant something more than it should. Then he nodded once and walked toward the hallway without saying anything else. I remember thinking it was just another quiet guest. I was wrong. About 20 minutes later, I saw him again in the lobby camera. He wasn't in his room. He was sitting in one of the lobby chairs facing the vending machine area. Completely still. No phone in his hands, no book. Just sitting, watching nothing in particular. At first, I thought maybe he had forgotten something in his room or just couldn't sleep. That happens often. People wander at night in places like this. But the longer I watched him, the more uncomfortable it became. He didn't move, not even small adjustments. No shifting weight, no scratching his face, nothing. Just sitting like he had been placed there. Around 1 midnight, I went to refill my water bottle in the back office. As I walked past the lobby, I felt something I couldn't immediately explain. It wasn't a sound, it was a tension, like the air itself was focused on me. I didn't look at him directly, but I knew his head had turned slightly. When I got back behind the desk, I checked the room system. Room 108 showed vacant. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I checked again. Still vacant. I opened the guest log. No check-in record, no payment record, nothing under his name. I checked the keycard activation history for room 108. No entry, no door unlocked, nothing. I sat there staring at the screen for a moment, trying to convince myself it was a system delay or glitch. Then I looked up. He was still in the lobby, still sitting, still watching the same direction. That's when I got up and walked over. "Hey," I said, Just checking. Everything okay with your room? He turned his head slowly. I can't sleep, he said. No emotion in his voice, just flat honesty. Then he looked forward again. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, then went back behind the desk. My hands felt slightly cold. Around 1:10 a.m., I noticed something else. He wasn't in the chair anymore. I scanned the lobby. Empty. Then I saw him, standing near the hallway that led to the stairwell, partially hidden by shadow. Not moving, just standing there, like he was mapping the building in real time. I called my manager. She told me to keep an eye on him and call if anything escalated. Her voice sounded half asleep, like she didn't understand why I sounded so tense. But I didn't know how to explain it properly, because nothing he was doing was loud enough to qualify as danger. It was just wrong. At 1:45 a.m., I checked the stairwell camera. He was inside, standing halfway up the stairs, not going up, not going down, just there, facing the wall, still again. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Every time I stopped watching him for even a short moment, he moved somewhere else in the building. Not randomly, but always somewhere I hadn't checked yet. After I saw him standing in the stairwell like that, I stopped trying to make sense of it and started trying to track him. I pulled up all the camera feeds at once: lobby, hallway, parking lot, stairwell. For a few minutes, nothing changed. Then I saw him again. Lobby camera. He was back in the lounge chair like nothing had happened. Same posture, same stillness, like he had never left. That's when I felt it properly. Not confusion anymore. Something closer to alarm. Because the building didn't allow for that kind of movement without being seen. There were no blind spots between the stairwell and the lobby that could explain how he was appearing and disappearing like that. I stood behind the desk and just watched him on the monitor, waiting for something to make sense. Around 2:30 a.m., the lobby camera flickered for a second, just a brief distortion. When it cleared, the chair was empty. I looked up in real time. No movement in the lobby, no sound, nothing. Then from somewhere behind the counter, I heard it. A soft metallic tap, like something touching the desk, slowly, once. Then again. I froze. The desk had storage underneath, but it was shallow, not enough space for someone to comfortably stay under there for long. Still, I stepped back and looked down. Nothing. Then the bell on the counter rang, right in front of me. I hadn't touched it. There was no one at the desk. I backed away instinctively, chair scraping against the floor, and moved fast into the back office. I shut the door behind me and locked it without thinking. My breathing was loud in my ears. I checked the monitor again through the office screen. The lobby feed showed the front desk empty, but the camera angle shifted slightly a moment later, just enough to reveal movement near the counter. Something low, crawling. I leaned closer to the screen. It was him, on his hands and knees, coming from behind the desk, moving like he already knew exactly where the cameras were positioned. Then he stopped and looked directly up. Not at the room, at the camera, like he knew I was watching. I stepped back from the monitor. My phone was already in my hand before I fully decided what I was doing. I called emergency services. My voice came out quieter than I expected when I explained someone was inside the building. They told me to stay locked in and that officers were on the way. While I was still on the call, I saw him again on the camera, now standing, moving slowly across the lobby. He didn't rush, he didn't hide. He walked to the glass entrance doors and just stood there, looking outside, like he was waiting for something to arrive. Then he turned toward the front desk again and walked out of frame. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps outside the office door. Slow. Measured. They stopped right in front of it. Then the handle came. One slow pull. Not frantic, not aggressive, just testing. I stepped back and didn't breathe. The handle released. Silence followed. Too long to feel normal. Then the footsteps moved away. I rushed back to the monitor. The lobby was empty again, but the chair had been tipped over, and near the edge of the frame, something was visible on the floor. A shadow, moving toward the hallway. Not walking now, gliding faster. I don't know how else to describe it. At that point, I just waited. Minutes felt stretched out. Then blue lights flashed through the parking lot camera. Police cars, 2 of them. As soon as they arrived, I saw movement on the feed. The shadow vanished instantly from view, like it had been pulled out of the space. The officers entered the building. I stayed locked in the office while they searched every room, every hallway, every stairwell. Nothing. No guest, no intruder, no signs of forced entry. But when they checked behind the front desk, they found the chair slightly pushed back and the bell on the counter sitting crooked. One officer asked me to describe the man again. When I did, he just exchanged a look with the other officer and said they would review exterior cameras. They never told me what they found, just that no one matching that description had entered or exited the building during the time I reported. After they left, I stayed in the office until sunrise. I kept checking the cameras even though I knew I shouldn't. The lobby stayed empty, but I kept noticing something small. Every few minutes, the camera feed would briefly adjust itself. Not enough to be obvious at first, just slight shifts in angle, like something was still trying to stay in frame. I quit that job a week later, not because I was told to, because I stopped being able to convince myself I had imagined it. And even now, whenever I hear a small bell ring unexpectedly, I still get that same feeling, like someone is standing just out of sight, waiting for me to stop looking at them directly before they move again.